Don't ruin your life. Don't date or marry until at least 2 years after your divorce or your spouse's death. I personally know instances where following this advice would have prevented much grief. I'm about to tell you of one told to me by someone in his own words, which I've edited a bit for brevity. This is his story. After my wife died, I couldn't think straight about most things. I was in a mental fog most of the time. I certainly couldn't imagine being married to anyone else. The thought of waking up next to someone other than Kim was unbearable. But after a year passed, I started having thoughts about sex again. Not a long-term relationship, just sex. I knew a woman I thought would be willing, and I figured things wouldn't go farther than just sex because she was divorced and had a kid. I proposed my idea to her. Just sex now and then, nothing else, and she agreed to give it a try. The problem was my brain was still badly screwed up from losing Kim and I didn't know it. For a few months, I anesthetized my grief by having this occasional female companionship and sex, but I wanted to find a new place to live since I couldn't bear living where Kim and I had lived. The woman suggested that I move in with her, and I did. It was one of the worst decisions of my life. A few months after moving in, I started coming out of my fog. I realized that this woman was absolutely wrong for me. Every day I had that terrible feeling that I was trapped in someone else's life. I didn't want to be in her house, I didn't want to deal with her problems, and I didn't want to be a substitute father to a little girl who idolized her real dad who lived in another state. This terrible feeling of dislocation and unreality and unhappiness finally pushed me to move out and end the relationship. I also made some incredibly stupid financial decisions during this time. It's still hard to believe I was ever that crazy. My wife's death had really warped my thinking. That's the end of his story. When a long-term relationship ends by breakup, divorce, or death, especially if you deeply loved your companion or could say you were still in love with him or her, it takes a long time to adjust to being without that person, to being single and alone. Your ability to think rationally will be crippled. Your conscious mind, and certainly your subconscious mind, wants desperately to replace the pieces of your life that your missing mate filled: the companionship, material assistance, psychological support, and sexual pleasure that this person provided. In this needy, irrational state, if an attractive person appears on the scene, your traumatized mind and emotions won't be sufficiently observant and critical. You'll overlook warning signs of future problems or even outright danger. You'll project qualities of your missing partner onto the new person. In fact, attempting to fill your emptiness too soon is a bad mistake, even if you find someone who is otherwise right for you. If you latch onto a substitute too soon, these things could happen. 1. You will not properly grieve and mentally adjust to your missing partner. This can cause problems in your new relationship. 2. You will not properly reflect on your lost relationship to identify where you should improve yourself as a good mate. 3. You may tend to recall only your missing partner's good qualities, especially if he or she has died, and therefore fail to identify any bad qualities to avoid in a future partner. 4. You may fail to assess your past life and career to identify new directions you should take or can take now since you're alone. Instead, you'll likely stay on the same familiar, comfortable life path, even if it's not the optimal one for you. You may think that if you did lose your mate, then aside from grief, your thinking would still be perfectly rational. That's exactly what the person in the previous story thought. So wait a couple of years, 24 months, before dating. It could make all the difference in your future happiness.